Welcome to the Raw State Podcast. Raw, unfiltered, real oilfield talk. The Raw State Podcast.
Jennifer McIntyre with NMW Industrial Consulting. How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing good. So you're up in the Northeast,
Yes, sir, I am.
Pennsylvania. So tell us a little bit about NMW. What are you guys doing?
Really, it was just formalizing something that I've been doing for a long time. So I've been in the oil field up here for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was in Scotland. And for a lot of years now, my number has been the number that seems to get passed around in a good way. We're not talking anything bad or unsavory. I get phone calls at all hours of the night from gentlemen and ladies that say, I got your number from so and so, and they say that you can probably help me find this. And it could be anything you could dream of. Anything under the sun. I've had company men call me with frozen sewer pipes in their trailers, and they've never experienced temperatures like we get up here. And I've had backyard guys calling me saying, hey, that big brown thing in the backyard, can you help me find that? I'm like, dude, can you take a picture? Because I have no idea what you're talking about. So really, I took those phone calls combined with a layoff, and I've been very blessed. That was the first layoff I've ever personally experienced in our industry, which I know I'm very lucky for that, and really got me thinking. It was a short, sharp shock, to say the least, and decided to formalize what I was already doing for people for free, and start my own consulting company, my own sales consulting company. And that's what NMW is doing. I have 6 clients formally signed up now. I'm working on a 7th. And basically what it is multiple companies that have non-conflicting services were calling me during that layoff saying, Jen, we've always wanted to work with you, but we think you're out of our price range. Okay, well, I want to work with you guys too. How can we figure this out? So I have different arrangements with different clients.
And this was 2015, right? Or 2016 layoff? Is that what you're talking
So
about? That
no,
that
it was
downturn?
actually due to COVID. My layoff was due to COVID, and that's why I'm saying that I've made it official. So
Oh, okay.
I have always been directly employed by somebody. So whether it's been New Park or whether it's been Central Hydraulics, but I've always had it built in my contract that I could consult for other companies with non-conflicting services for financial gain. So it's always been above board, but I never organized it, if that makes any sense. I never made that my
Yeah.
primary source of income until the actual formal
Right.
layoff, the COVID layoff that I experienced in March.
Okay. So in 2015 and 2016, that downturn, I think it started a lot of what is happening now with these. Like you said, people are calling you for X service or X thing, and they just don't know who to contact. But your name's out there. We saw a lot of this in the downturn in 2014, 2015, 2016, where people's contacts kind of got kind of dumped out on the table and got lost, and everything got scrambled up. And I guess that's kind of what you're explaining now, is that people are just like, hey, this person knows how to get XYZ, call them up. And it seems like you've kind of made your business based on that.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And vice versa, helping some of those smaller service companies that can't afford a full-time, sales representative.
Right.
Every day I'm getting 6, 7 calls from from friends in the industry that are losing their jobs due to downturn, due to COVID, due to just current circumstances. And I'll say to them, okay, so where were you? Where were you financially? What are you looking for moving forward? And I had one of my very good friends say to me just the other day, well, I was on 250,000 and at the end of the year I get 75% bonus. And I'm like, "Hey, listen, that's not going to happen." You know what I mean? The days
Yeah,
of getting that
yeah.
kind of salary as a sales rep are kind of past us. We need to figure something else out for you, and how do we do that? How do we adapt as sales professionals, um, to continue on with what we're accustomed to, but change our services for vendors and operators that are struggling. Um, and that's what the company's really about.
Yeah, we saw in 2015, a partner of mine, Ken Hartman at Wellsite, we saw an opportunity for contract sales that we went in and said, look, there's companies calling us, service companies primarily, that have a product, they can't afford to sell it, but they can't afford not to sell it, right? So they're like, Chris, we can't afford to hire under the traditional sense and sell the product, but we need to sell the product, or
Yeah.
we're dead in the water. And that's kind of what you're explaining, is that did live through. We never were able to get traction in the sense of everybody adopting that way. It was kind of hard to adopt it. It was a grassroots effort, and we saw a lot of struggles in that, primarily with people that historically have been in the business, that have been hired to do a job and get a cush salary, kind of like what you're talking about, and then being paid commission on top of that. And they couldn't just rewind and end up jumping into a commission only situation, because they have bills and mortgages and all these things. So it was quite difficult for us, but I'm glad it seems like you've been able to make it and grow that. So that's great.
Yeah, and I'm now going down the route of the whole process of becoming an actual registered women-owned company. So the whole WSB process, which is definitely challenging. They don't make it easy for you, and for good reason. So I've just started that process, and I'm actually going to be documenting that process. So I'm filming every little bit that I'm doing, filling in my applications, the interviews that I'm going through, and everything else, um, just to kind of put it out there, in the future for other ladies in the industry that potentially want to take that route.
Coming from a woman's perspective, what's it like being an independent owner of a company, a service company in oil and gas?
Well, again, I've been up here for a while, and one of my sayings to all of our operators is that it's not actually considered stalking unless, like, the police get involved and a letter arrives at your house. So I'm a little bit of a busybody. I make it my point to know everyone, and it's a small industry, as you know. The same people pop up,
Yeah.
again and again. I walk into trailers. I did corporate relocations in Scotland. So even over there, I was working with guys that were moving to Dubai or Australia, and I was helping them get their big trucks, across the pond, and their dogs' passports ready for them, and all this kind of goofy stuff, and their wife's 500 pairs of designer shoes. Do they fit in the closet of the apartment we're moving to? That kind of thing. And I still walk in and, there'll be a guy that I moved to Dubai 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, we all end up bumping into each other again at some point." So, I'm kind of relatively well known, and I have to say that the response from uh, past clients, from my peers, from a lot of the people in organizations that I'm involved with, the Appalachian Pipeliners Association and American Association of Drilling Engineers, have been so supportive. I am truly blessed at the response and just the outpouring of offers of help and letters of recommendation and all of that kind of stuff. Now, do I think um, it's like that for all women in the industry? No. I always used to joke and say it's like stages of grief. So you're a girl, right? It's very obvious that you're a girl when you walk out on a location, and you're going to get all of the normal banter that you usually get when they don't know you, and when they realize you're not going to respond the way that they're expecting you to, which could involve middle fingers and a very smart mouth. um, their attitude kind of changes, and they go through their stages of grief, and eventually when they realize that you mean what you mean and that you're going to work as hard as anybody else, if not harder, you become like their sister or their daughter or their granddaughter. And when you get to that point with these guys, like, there isn't anything that they wouldn't do for you. And I'm blessed to be at that point in my career, at least up here, for sure. So everybody's been incredibly supportive.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't happen instantly, like you said. It takes a while to build that trust and build that reputation with people. So, hats off to you for grinding it out. And it's a small oil field, small family. You'll run into people that you know everywhere. So it is interesting that way. What are some of the products that you focus on? Like, do you have products that consume most of your business?
So the way that I've structured it is when a new company approaches me, we sit down together, talk about where they are currently, where they want the company to be, whether that is rebranding with social media presence, whether that it is, they want to just gain market share, whether they've had an issue with representation, or sorry, with their um what am I trying to think of, with their, they've had an issue in the field, right?
Kind of their sales presence?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
whether it be a safety issue, whether it be something that there's been a change of management that they want to get out there, that type of thing. And we set very specific goals and allocate how much of my time it's going to take to help them achieve those goals. Very similar to a lawyer, I keep it all on my phone. I press a button. I'm currently working on rough cut oil and gas. I account for everything that I'm doing for them during that time, stop the button and move on to the next client. And sometimes that's 5 hours a week that's been allocated to achieving their goals, and sometimes it's 2 days a week. We really decide together how much time is necessary to achieve what it is that they're trying to achieve. I have one gentleman whose wife is kind of the brains of the outfit, and he said, "Listen, long term, I don't really think we're going to need your help on a weekly or monthly basis. I just want you. She's a smart lady. Teach her the ropes. How does she research companies in the industry? How does she do research on the individuals that she's going to need to contact there? How do you go about initiating an MSA with these companies?" So, instead of allocating time every week, we've set aside a set price for a set period of time to basically set her on the right path. And that doesn't involve, giving her my contacts, but it's just teaching her the techniques that are necessary to kind of get them where they want to be. Because moving forward, he wants her to take on that role. I mean, obviously, I'll always be here for them to call on if they hit some bumps in the road moving forward. But I thought that was a kind of cool, different project to be working on with them, and it'll be rewarding for me to see her move on. I mean, I've been a big advocate of mentoring other young ladies in the industry anyhow over the years, and set her on the right path, and set them on their way. So I work with lots of companies. I have a Cressman Tubular, and they do casing and tubing distribution. I work with a company called Rough Cut, who does cleaning services and roustabout services and containment. And then I work with some pipeline companies, Firestone and JGK. They do reclamation services. So the other complete, end of the spectrum for our industry. My one rule is obviously that there are no conflicting services. I'm not representing multiple companies that have the same service lines out there. I think that's really important. Moving forward, my hope is to employ other sales professionals, and just give them the structure that I've already put in place and the guidance so that they can take on their own bank of clients as well. Because I truly feel this format for sales is definitely going to be the way forward, not that traditional single salesperson, high salary for a company. I see a real shift in that for sure.
Yeah, it's good to see that other people are seeing that as well. I don't think I think that the we've exhausted the business model that exists in oil and gas, and I think that it really is ripe for disruption, and I think it needs to be disrupted. I don't, I've been in that position where I've managed many people under me that have made those salaries and made those commissions, and I've been on both ends, a failing service company and a successful one, and I can tell you that there's no doubt it needs to change, and companies are going to have to be willing to change to see success in the future.
And the other side of it is, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but for a long time now, I've seen, peers and more power to them. And at least until now, I am obsessed with work. I spend more time with the people out there in the field than I do my own family. That's part of the nature of the business. But I've seen other sales professionals that are off more than they're on, so to speak, and I don't think that's going to fly anymore in our industry. You're going to have to adhere to companies getting what they pay for, and I think salespeople are going to have to be held accountable. And I'm probably going to get shot for saying that, but I think it's been a long time coming. Sitting on a job walk and not getting out of your pickup truck
Yeah.
just the sheep to say you're there. Yeah, I don't think that's really going to fly anymore. We're all going to have to become much more efficient, including sales professionals.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, what's the health of the Northeast industry like? I know I think that you guys held steady with 26 or so rigs up there for the last couple weeks. So, what's the overall outlook for the future looking like up there for the rest of 2020?
Um, I mean, the honest truth of it is, it's still going to be a little bit rough. I think that certainly in the state of Pennsylvania, we are not open as much as we would like to be, as far as the offices, as far as being able to visit locations, those types of things. Obviously, without our businesses opening up, the economy, at least in Pennsylvania, is still really struggling. Um, Obviously, we're holding out hope because those prices are buoying a little bit. But for there to be true improvement, I think we're really going to have to see those prices go up that little bit more. Um, with the oil production decreasing, maybe that'll buoy our natural gas side of things up here a little bit. But listen, this isn't the first time we've been through this. Just the other day, I get those texts from rig data with the rig counts, and for a laugh, because I couldn't remember exactly, I thought I'd go back and look at the last downturn and see what our rig count had actually dropped to, and it was 488. And we're now sitting across the US at, I think, 311 is what the last text said to me.
Yeah.
But if you look at the last downturn, we went down to 488. And then at the very bottom of that valley, you look at it a year on the same time. So in 2019, we were back up to 1,040. And so it's this to
Right.
pass, right? Like, this is something that we've all been through repeatedly, the longer that we've been in the industry. And It's not fun, but it will get better.
You said a little bit about, and we'll go back to a little bit about the structure of contract sales and contract business development. Kind of what you're doing now is how do you think that the cyclical nature? Do you think the cyclical nature of the oil and gas industry is kind of feeding that model and supporting the need for it?
I do. And the other thing is that, to be honest, these last two downturns that we've had, in my opinion at least, came very close together compared to what we've had historically in the past. And I think a lot of service companies, at least up here, are realizing that they have to have some sort of diversification in order to survive long term. So, yes, by all means, oil and gas can be their core, but if they have means of extending their current services that they provide to oil and gas to other industries, or to provide, other solutions elsewhere in those downturns, it's definitely beneficial. Rough Cut, for example, that I work with, traditionally cleaned rigs, right? That's what their niche was. They were cleaning pits, tanks, washing down rigs when they were stacking out, that type of thing. We've taken their hydrovacs and moved them over to other industrial applications. They're looking into doing some stuff with coal reclamation, which really isn't tied to our energy downturn. That coal reclamation stuff doesn't go away. So it's finding other solutions, both to keep their people employed and to keep their equipment moving during those downturns. And I definitely see people's eyes opening as far as that's concerned. Now, that doesn't work for every service company, but certainly there are a lot that can cross things over.
Yeah, that's a good point. Diversification is something that you hear a lot more of nowadays than you did in the past. We deal with that quite a bit in several aspects of the industry with downhole tools and software and different things. You just have to you have to become multifaceted if you're going to survive. And the one trick ponies out there, they're gonna have a hard time struggling. And as you said, these downturns seem to be collapsing together. The distance between them is collapsing, so we're having them more often. And I'm kind of fearful. I see oil popping back up. WTI is coming back
Yep.
up to 40 plus, and I'm thinking, man, this is really early, and I hope that these operators don't jump out there and start picking rigs up at historic levels, because I think it could be bad for us. I think it could shorten that cycle again, and then we end up right back where we started, maybe even worse.
And I think that's part of what's making them closer together. I'm hoping, praying that we've learned our lesson. I mean, it seems to be what happens every single time. The other thing that I see is the same with service providers. Everybody jumps on that oil and gas truck as soon as things buoy a little bit, and all it does is flood the market again. You get trucking companies that have whittled down their fleet to five bottle trucks because that's what they're currently running, and they see the industry pick up slightly, and they go out and buy 50 brand new trucks. All it does is water down a market that's already still struggling. And it's putting themselves in a financial position that if this happens again in 2 years, they're closing their doors. It's this vicious cycle for sure. We need to break it.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a magic bullet for it. I think that it's capitalism. I mean, everybody can, you're out there working really hard, got your head down in the oil field, and you say, "Man, I can do this. I can do this. I can start my own company." And we have the freedom in this country. Thank God for that freedom that we're blessed with. That we can go out and start a company tomorrow. And you see a lot of these startups just rush in, and they go out, and then they start struggling and have these issues when the market gets saturated. And then it becomes, well, what differentiates you? Well, not much. I'm just providing the same service as these guys. So I kind of see us. I mean, I've been on both sides of this industry in the last 26 years. I've drilled in places where it's mass manufacturing of oil wells. It's like an assembly line for oil wells, fastest drilling in the world, over to less faster wells where it's more tedious and longer term work. And I think we're moving more towards all these services are becoming a commodity, and it's going to be who can operate the leanest, who can operate the smartest, and who can operate the more being more diversified in the future is going to be the people that survive it.
100%. Absolutely. And it's just looking at things differently. I mean, the other thing that you see during these downturns is companies expanding into services that they haven't traditionally provided incorrectly. So I don't know how to explain that. They've traditionally had roustabouts, and they decide that the closer they are to the wellhead, or moving into a well plugging program is the most sensible thing to do. But they're not doing the right research, and it becomes dangerous and inefficient.
Right.
Just they're grasping at something, right? And maybe not doing it exactly the way that they should. There is something to be said for sticking with your wheelhouse. I mean, what you're good at, what you've proven yourself to be good at, and looking at doing that same thing but somewhere else, right? So you have a hydrovac company. It doesn't really make sense for them to move into something that's completely on the other end of the spectrum. Stay with what you've got. Just find something else you can do with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of companies struggle with that. Is just where do you go? Which road do you take at the fork of the road? They know they need to do something. They just don't know exactly what it is, and it's a crapshoot. I mean, you start it and you go one way, and then you figure out halfway down that road, hey, we shouldn't have done this. We've put people in danger, or we just can't successfully. Keep our service quality at the level that it needs to be. And, I think a lot of companies struggle, as far as what I see, they struggle with understanding the value of a technical expert in that field, and how much value that brings to their organization. I think a lot of leaders in these downturns, they look at numbers and they get fixated on the numbers and not the value of a person. And that's a really tough. It's not easy by any stretch. I've failed at it, and I've learned my lesson from countless situations as a leader and as a manager. You tend to look at the numbers of a person and say, well, this person's at 200,000 a year, and we have to cut, and we have to figure out how to right the ship. But you don't really consider the value that that person brings to the organization. So you have a young, willing person that's below them, that's not as knowledgeable, not as experienced, but they're working for 50, 40% of what you're paying that person. And you fill those slots, and you end up with a result that I don't know the words to put to it, but you can't really quantify the loss of that knowledge and that experience. And I think we all could learn to do a better job at those in those situations.
Absolutely. And talking along those lines, that's another service that NMW is in the final stages of providing. And there are companies that do it internationally. But I have a bank of people that I've worked with in the past, that have either been forced into retirement because of the downturn, drilling superintendent that maybe wasn't necessarily ready to retire, but has taken that option so that some of the younger people in his company can keep their jobs. The gentleman's been drilling for 40 years. He was working on his grandpap's rig when he was 8 years old. I've seen the black and white pictures. We are going to be launching a secondary service, where you can pay a set rate for those professionals' time. And I already have about 25 individuals with various different types of backgrounds signed up to that program. Um, and whether it be a service company that wants that individual's advice, or whether it be an operator that wants that experience and that advice, they're having a particular problem out on a location with a well or whatever the case may be. I definitely think there's value there. And I think it's important that it's local. Like I said, there are international companies that do that. But if you're asking somebody that's been drilling in these plays up here and has been doing it for 20 odd years, it's much more focused expertise than somebody whose experience, has been in a completely different area. So I'm pretty excited about that too. That'll be coming soon.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear, and I think that operators and service companies would be. I figured they would be jumping at the opportunity to be having like local domain experts on demand,
Yes.
right? So, I mean, that's a service that I think that has been long. The industry's been long waiting for and needing. Tremendous need for that. Cyclical nature of the industry has driven us towards this on-demand services model. It's just if and this probably just as well as I do over the years, oil and gas is not the best place for change, right? Nobody wants to change. And I know in other industries struggle with it, but uh, us in particular, we get stuck in our ways and we just do the same thing over and over again. And not that a new business model or things like this, that's on-demand services, will change rapidly, but I think it's time.
I 100% agree. And listen, we're keeping it anonymous. So the way that we're doing it is that individual's resume is there for uh, the interested party to view, to see the expertise, but they don't know who they're talking to. So I'm hoping that that anonymity will allow younger engineers to call on those individuals or whatever the case may be, and ask those questions, because I think there's that kind of stigma too. You have an aging population in our industry that's definitely being phased out, that have this amazing wealth of knowledge. And the younger guys are absolutely great. And I love working with a lot of them, but we can't lose that older expertise. So I'm trying to link those two together in a pay to play type scenario. So we're excited about that too.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, and good luck on that because we'll be watching that one. I've been interested in that for almost a decade now, so that's an interesting part of the industry for people to follow. So the main clientele that NMW has is service driven service companies, oilfield service providers.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. And you do have you work with both operators and service companies, right?
Yep. Certainly do.
How do people get in touch with you, Jennifer? What's the best what's the best way? You have a website? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is www.nmw-llc.com. But you can find me on LinkedIn as well, and Twitter. We have a page on Facebook too. Pretty much anywhere. If you Google us, you're probably going to be able to find us. And then, like I said, ask any guy that's been working up here for longer than 12 months, and they'll be able to give you my number because they've all got it.
You speak to company man quite a bit, right?
I prefer to be in the field. So I have people ask me where my office is, and it's in my truck. That's generally speaking where you'll find me. I have learned so much from those guys out there, just asking questions. Yeah, I spend a lot of time with them.
And what's their general outlook of what's going on? Are they receptive? Are they fearful? What's going on in your opinion? What do you see out there right now?
they're scared. And it's very difficult for me. It's probably the hardest part of these downturns that we have. I mean, I had a gentleman that is one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met in our industry call me and ask if he could be my assistant. I'm like, dude, you can't even turn on a computer, let alone come and help me doing what it is that I do. You know what I mean? Like, you are an absolute expert at what it is that you do, but honey, I don't even know what I would do with you over here. But they're scared, and it's heartbreaking. Taking and fielding those calls is
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking. And then the other side of it is that things get really cutthroat out there, right? So anything that goes wrong on a location, and there's finger pointing, and there's that ugly side of this thing too, that you definitely see an upturn in because people are scared, right? They don't want something to happen on their watch and run the risk of not being there anymore.
Yeah, we're a real loss averse industry, so everybody's concerned with what they have to lose, not necessarily what they have to gain. So it's a very difficult position that these guys are put in, and there's pressure from all sides, right? So these guys have lives, they have families, they want to keep their job, but yet they how do you improve it? And this is one of the things you hear a lot in our industry as well. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Well,
Mm,
if that was the case, then we'd still be drilling with wood derricks. But I mean, things have to change, right? But it's a tough spot for these guys, and my hat goes off to them. I know a lot of company men, and they have a lot of weight on their shoulders and a lot of pressure. And for those guys listening out there, man, thank you for putting up with all this stuff and this mess. And I don't really think there's a clear answer for uh, the fear. I just think that we just have to all get through it together, and I think we can. I think we're going to come out stronger in the end. It's just man, it's going to change a lot over the next probably 18 to 24 months. The industry is going to be different than it was 2 years ago.
absolutely. And the other thing is a few company men that I've known, and you get this during downturns too, actually revert back to service providers. So they've no longer in their current position, and they move over to working with a vendor, a service provider, and some of them have great success doing that. um, Other ones that are dear friends of mine, I have one gentleman. He's a former Marine. He is the biggest hearted person I've ever known in my life, but I spend at least one phone call a day talking him down from telling somebody to F off. I'm like, honey, you can't do that anymore. You're on the service side. Like, we don't do that. Okay. Like, you're going to have to say, yes, sir. And you're going to have to think about the scenario so that you can, you know what I mean, work with it as best as you can. So that's a funny one. I had another guy call me, and he's moved over to the service side of things. And he says, Jen, this job is hard. I said, yeah, it is. It's hard. He's like, I swear to goodness, when I'm a company man again, I'll return every call. I said, I am writing this down. You're going to sign it. And when that happens, show it to you. I'm going to come to your trailer. I'm going to say, do you see this? Why did you not answer my call? And he's laughing. But the bottom of the line is we just all have to stick together and support each other. I'm constantly telling people, I may not have something for you right now, but please still call me. My heart and my ears are open to you. And even if I can't personally help right now, um, you know what I mean? I'm here to listen. And we are a tight knit community, and we just need to be kind to each other and supportive, and it will get better.
Yeah, it's interesting that as much as the automation thing is taken over, there's still such a human element in everything that we do, and we're all humans, and we all want that connection, and we want to feel like we're being supported. And I think that it's interesting when other people put on other people's shoes and walk in these different positions. I've heard that before too. Company men saying, "Man, I'm not gonna treat service companies the way I treated them back in the past." And it's interesting because I see it from both sides. And I think that company men and engineers and drilling managers, they are opening up. I've been shocked at how many have responded in the last 30 days to virtual meetings, phone calls,
Yep.
emails. They're all getting back to you, and I think that there is a collective effort, and maybe some alignment is happening. God willing, it is that more people are understanding other positions and the struggles that they all have. And I think that that's interesting to hear that perspective coming from your side and up there in the Northeast, that it is happening everywhere, I think.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I've really struggled. I tell everybody all the time, I'm a hugger. This social distancing thing does not sit well with me. I hug people, they don't even know me, and I'm like, oh, I've heard about you, give them a big hug. They're like, who is this crazy blonde lady? But it's been a real struggle for me. But there's ways and means. I've started with bids that I've been returning, or pricing and stuff like that. I'm doing little tiny videos, like 20-minute or 20-second videos, 30-second videos, just saying, hey, you know what I mean, it's me. And I wanted to say hi, and I'm sending over my price list for project A. And the first time I sent one out was to one of my company men. He picks up the phone and calls me. He's like, you are so goofy. What are you doing? I'm like, I miss you guys. I just, I miss seeing you and looking at you in the face. And I kind of thought you might miss me too. He's like, there's something wrong with you. I'm like, did you like it? He's like, yeah, it was funny. I said, all right, well then it's working. It's just figuring out,
Yeah, that
continue connecting with
that's
people.
fantastic.
Yeah, it went over well.
Yeah, that's a unique, that's interesting way to connect with people, and the response is great. I mean, that's the stuff that people need to be doing, right? It's the videos, it's the different things, and I think that I think this is a different era for oil and gas, and being able. I know we're on right now. I'm on about 8 rigs, and they're spread out between Colorado and the Permian Basin. But I mean, it's people. We can't always get out to the rigs now because some of them are shut down and won't let us out there. But I think that these guys are looking for things like that, small videos, a video chat, um, and that's interesting to hear. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I think they're feeling disconnected too, and my advice to salespeople though too, because I've seen it repeatedly. I always try and be incredibly respectful. Those guys, listen, I can't do what they do out there. Call them before you go out. Make sure they're not cementing or doing something that they, what I mean, that they need to concentrate on. So I do always try and call. And you know what? They may tell me, it may be a new guy. He may tell me no the first 6 times, but the seventh or eighth time, he usually, it turns around. I've caught him at a time where it's a little bit quieter, and he's like, you know what? This girl at least is respectful enough to call me before she's coming out here, and she's not just showing up. Just come on out, I've had a lot of success doing that too, because those guys are incredibly busy.
Yeah, and it's an important job, right? A lot lives are on the line, so
Absolutely.
it's completely understandable. How much time do you spend? You said your truck is your office. How much time do you spend in the truck a day? You're 12 hours, 14?
Oh, easy. Yeah. Because I cover all the way up to nearly the New York border, all the way to the southern border of West Virginia. And there's actually one of our operators doing some test wells in Virginia now. So Kentucky, Ohio. Um, yeah, a long time, lots of time in my truck. You could live in my truck. So when the zombies come for the apocalypse, everybody head to my truck. We will survive in my truck for at least a month. It looks like a homeless person has been living in the back seat for a year. We've got food, we've got clothes, we've got water. We're good.
Yeah, you better be prepared nowadays with these protests and stuff. Good Lord, be careful. I mean, I'm seeing people pulling people out of cars, and I mean, it's crazy out there. It's a, like God bless you for continuing and pushing on and grinding, because the grinders in this industry are the ones that are going to last. And if I've said it before, any advice I can give to people that are getting into the industry or young that are listening right now, you have to be multifaceted. You have to keep your eyes open, think out of the box, and you have to grind this out. Your position today may not be the position you'll be in the future, may not be 6 months, may not be in 6 years, but you have to be able to bring value to stay relevant. And I think that that's one of the key things. And I hope that I can continue to learn. I'm like a sponge. I like to learn, and I like to diversify and learn new things and expand my knowledge. And I think that's what's kept me so long in the industry. And trust me, I've tried to get out of this thing. I'm no different than anybody else. I've looked at other industries and I've said, man, I think this is the exit ramp. I want to get out of this, but I'm really good at what I do, and I've got a passion for this industry. I've talked to people like yourself, and I hear the passion come out of them, and it gets me supercharged. It gets me energized, and I think that people need to hear that. That's why we started this show. We started this show to get people like yourself on that are passionate about the industry, that are pulling their weight. They're pulling in the right direction, getting them aligned with everybody to work collectively for a better industry. And I think that we can do it together. We just have to get everybody's stories out there, because all of our stories interconnect in some form or fashion. The people that you work with daily in the Northeast are probably dealing with the same issues the people that are in the Eagleford, in the Haynesville, in the DJ, anywhere. So I really enjoy having your perspective on the show.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I say to those young salespeople too, ask those guys questions before we lose all those older guys. Ask them questions. Their eyes light up. If you're willing to ask the questions to learn what it is that they're doing out there, they'll walk you all around the place. They'll show you exactly what's going on. That's how I've learned the majority. I didn't go to college for anything that has to do with it. I took industrial photography. All that means is I take really pretty pictures of rigs that I'm not supposed to be taking. Okay, that's it. But I've learned everything from those guys out there. They taught me everything. So this rig walks. You mean to tell me it walks? Call me 30 minutes before you do it the next time. I want to see it, and they're on the phone to you like, Jen, it's about to happen. Okay. That may sound commonplace to somebody that's doing that every day, but ask those questions. Those guys love to share. And that's how you also gain their trust and they become your friends. They love to teach and pass on what it is that they do out there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think that we get scared, right? People get scared to ask questions. I think engineers do it. I think that drilling people do it, where they're expected to know more than what they actually know, and they take an expert. Like I don't know anything about cementing. I mean, I haven't been on the completion side of it, so all I've been is on the exploration side. I know general stuff about completions, but I'm no expert, and I've never claimed to be. But you know, in exploration, I consider myself an expert of some sorts, but still learning. Right, so I'm not afraid to ask questions and lean on people that have more expertise or more knowledge than me. And I think that other people should be that same way, and just hey, just ask the question. Don't be scared. We all want to feel value, and a company man that's been doing this for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, they can be extremely helpful at helping you grow your knowledge and getting better, right?
Absolutely. But I want to ask Chris, so you're telling me that the completions people and the drilling people, talk to each other? Because last I checked, that wasn't something we did in this.
Yeah, that's a funny story actually. It's like geology, production, completion, and drilling are kind of completely like one side of the building is
Yeah.
geology and they don't talk to the production side. And I've seen that over the years. It's hilarious actually to see some of these interactions and I, I don't know. I don't know how it started. I could tell you a story about an interesting story about. I almost went out of the service industry into the operations side of it for an operator, and it was a major operator. It was Exxon, and this was early in my career. And a company man, I was drilling down in South Texas, and this company man, he had been with Exxon Mobil for 30 years, and I was in my early 20s, and he said, Chris, we really need people like you to take over positions like mine, and we're hiring for company men for like technician. It wasn't a company man position, it was more like a clerk for him, but it would have been something he could have mentored me and I could have learned how to become a company man. And I said, "Oh, I don't think so. I don't think, I'm not cut out for that." And he goes, "No, no, no, you're perfect for it." So he encouraged me to put in my application. I made it through certain levels of the application process, all the way up to the final interview. So I was one of the last few that were chosen. And I called him right before that interview. I was driving to Houston for it, and I said, "Hey, by the way, like, thanks for getting me this far and helping me out." And the last thing he said, "Man, don't walk in there and take any bullshit from these guys. Like, you stand your ground. They're looking for people to stand their ground. They're going to try to trick you, and you need to answer the questions and be strong and stand up for yourself." So that's the last thing he said to me. I said, "Perfect." So I go into this interview. They call me in, and I'm sitting in front of one of the senior leaders in Exxon. And at the time, he was a VP. And so I didn't know who he was or anything. I just thought, well, this is another person I'm interviewing with. Well, he was bouncing a stress ball, and he didn't stop. So I'm sitting across from him, and he's just bouncing this ball with his feet up on the desk. And he finally stops after like this awkward 30 seconds or so, and he says, "Does this bother you?" And I thought, aha, this is the test. So I said, "You know what? It does bother me. And I drove all the way here for this interview, and I would appreciate your full attention." And that was it. They escorted me out. I never got the job.
Are you
And
kidding
when he
me?
heard what I said, no, I'm serious. I didn't get it. I failed. They said, "No, that we didn't pick you." And I mean, he cut the interview short and everything. So I went back to the rig, and the company man laughed so hard, and he said, "I cannot believe that you said what you said to that guy." And I said, "Well, you told me to stand up for myself." And so, that was my last attempt at switching over to an operator. So I stayed in the service part of it for the rest of my career, still in it today. So,
Oh, goodness.
yeah, I just, I
I'm
mean,
proud of
it's
you. I am
those
because that's a
stories
Jen
that
move. I'm proud.
yeah, it's funny now. I can laugh back at it. I can laugh at it now, but at the time I was pretty disappointed, but I thought, "Oh well, I guess I'm not cut out for it." So, um, but yeah, it's interesting. These guys don't some groups within these organizations, there's a lot of dysfunction, I think, that people don't know about. I see it when I go into their offices. I'm not calling anybody out. All the companies have it. at some level or some amplitude. But there's dysfunction within every company, and every company has its own struggles. Whether they're not getting clear communication from the field, from their own departments, like it's a big problem. And I don't claim to have the solution. I just, I see what I see, and I report it how I see it. And but the only thing, the advice I guess from our end is, because we're supporting these operators, is just be there and listen, and you'll find what they're struggling with, and if you can find out how they're struggling and what they're struggling with, then you can help them modify a solution to match it and to cure it, and I think that's where you can bring value.
100%. It's definitely listening. Real quick, I had a vendor meeting with an operator. I'm not going to say who, but I walked in, packed room, and obviously it had everybody from construction, drilling, completions, production, the pipeline guys, everybody. And I pick a seat at the table. D- Literally 2 seconds later, my phone goes with a text, and I look at it under the table. Oh, I see. I see whose side of the table you chose. I'm not joking. I sat on the completion side of the table, and the drilling guys instantly started texting me. All right, we see how it is, Jen. You chose that side of the table. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? Oh, goodness. They're so funny. I adore them, though. I think the people
Yeah,
are what keeps you there. Like, you tried to leave, and I hear that story over and over again. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine leaving them. They're my family. They're my family. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, it's you become a fixture of the industry, right? And I think I want to leave a positive mark on this industry. I want everybody does. I think I don't think there's anybody. I mean, there's egos out there, and there's different things that get in the way, but I think in the end, everybody wants to leave a positive a mark in the industry. I want to become a better leader. I mean, that's one of my personal goals, is how do I become a better manager, a better leader of people? And I think I've evolved definitely over the last decade, quite a bit better than what I started with. Early in my career, I was pretty just strictly technical, very, very hard to get, hard to approach, and things. I think we have all evolved, and we become these fixtures of the industry in some form or fashion, and we can all contribute, and it's a mishmash of different skills and people, and it's all great. It's all a great melting pot of different backgrounds and histories and knowledge and skill, and I think that we all have a place, right? So I encourage other people that have just gotten into the industry, and I don't even encourage my own kids, and they're now at their stage where they're graduating college and they're off getting careers. I actually discourage them from getting in the oil field, because it's such a brutal industry, and not all the time is it brutal, because it's just brutal because of the nature of the cyclical. And I've been heartbroken because I've been out of a job. I've been heartbroken because I've lost work. I've been heartbroken because I had to terminate people. And all that heartbreak, I guess I just didn't want to subject my kids to it. And I thought, I got to talking to some people that are not in the industry and in other industries, and they said, Chris, that it's the same here. It's no different.
Yeah.
So construction, automotive, aerospace, like it exists everywhere. So I've kind of crossed that valley, I guess, and I've kind of encouraged my daughter, my son, to do what they love, of course. But if it's in the oil field, then here, I'll help you any way I can. So
No, absolutely. And I was very much the same. I have two little girls. They've had pink hard hats since their heads were big enough to fit on them. And those girls, they amaze me. They're like sponges, you know. They can tell what a compressor station looks like when we drive past, and they know what's a drilling location, what's a completions location. And there have been times where, I've exchanged my daughter with my ex-husband on lease roads, and I've had to wake them up at 2 o'clock in the morning to hotshot a part out to a client, and she's watching SpongeBob on the video player in the back seat when she was little. And I mean, they've been immersed in it too, but they're proud of their mom, and they both say, at least right now, that they want to go in the industry too. And I think I'm okay with that, because with all of the heartbreak that I've had some really, really, really good times too. And it's opened other doors for me as well. I'm very involved in the charitable side of our industry, and that is incredibly rewarding. We are very giving as an industry, even when we don't have it ourselves. And you know what? If that's what they want to do, and they want to follow my footsteps, then God bless them. There are so many good things about the industry, just as there are difficult things. And you are right; it's probably the same over every industry. So, yeah.
Well, Jennifer, it was a pleasure having you on. And remind us again, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Jennifer McIntyre. My website is www.nmw-llc.com. And my number is actually listed on LinkedIn. It's nothing hidden. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the industry up here in the Northeast, or if anybody needs any help, or they're interested in our services that we provide at NMW. Feel free to reach out.